My name is Dusti Martin. If you don't know me already, I'm a realtor here in Phoenix. I've been investing in real estate since 2009. I've been licensed since 2014. And I'd say roughly 50 to 60% of all of the deals I do since the day I was licensed have been for out-of-state clients or virtual tours or showings, usually for people who are relocating. So one of my past clients, Tim, who is in New York, has graciously agreed to kind of like give everybody the rundown on how it worked for him and how it went the first time, how it went the second time, and then how it went different versus purchasing there in New York. So let's just jump into that real quick, Tim, because I think that'll get down in the weeds a little bit. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, like where you're from, what you do, and how you ended up owning 2 homes in Arizona.
Okay, this is fun, like a little introduction here. So my name is Timothy Byrne, and I'm a teacher. I've been working as a teacher for 13 years. I've been tutoring for 18 years. And I currently own a property in New York, and I have 2 houses in Arizona. I'm born and raised in New York in Eastchester. And I currently live in Tuckahoe, and the 2 homes that I have in Arizona are in Avondale, and the second one is in North Peoria.
Cool. So how did you end up owning a place in Avondale? We'll start with that one because that was your first one in 2014.
So originally, I was planning on moving out to Arizona back in 2014, and when I was going to move out there, I was looking with my girlfriend, now my wife, and we were looking for a home, and she had lived there her whole life. So she had a little bit of the inside scoop of, the different areas that were there. And so initially we were looking for an affordable area because I wasn't making as much money back then. So, so we looked into different areas. We liked Avondale. The houses were definitely more reasonable there, and you can get a pretty good size home there. And so we found a nice size home. It was a little over like 2,000 square feet. And we got a really good deal on it. And we bought when the market was low. So that really worked in our favor. And I felt it was a really easy process just because everything was just done through e-sign. Which that's like my favorite thing. It's just the click of a button. I mean, and you made it so easy, just saying, all right, all you got to do is just read this document and sign it. and I felt like the whole process was very straightforward and simple because everything was done in that nature, from like the termite inspection to the appraisal to all the different steps in the process, made it very simple.
So yeah, that particular property, it wasn't that easy, believe it or not. It was a short sale. And so,
so that was harder for you probably,
yeah,
right?
At the time, sales were taking like 90 days. And okay. I think we got yours done in 30 or 35, I want to say. And
right.
It did take me yelling at the bank and the HOA a couple times. But I'm glad
you put in the hard work. You put in all the hard work there. I just remember by April 2014, I was an owner of that home. So, yeah. So even despite all the work that it took on your end, you still made it seem easy, for me at least. So I didn't feel stressed at all by it.
No. But so why don't you? So Yesenia was living back there at the time. So why don't you guys and I know Yesenia's on with Isa. So
sure.
why don't you guys maybe talk about how you went about, because I think Isa was there with us. Weren't you, Isa, when we FaceTimed with Yesenia's family to walk through the house so they could see it? Tim, do you want to go over how we kind of structured that?
Yeah, we were there for the Avondale one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were there, and we did a walkthrough of the house, and we took a look at it. I mean, we had taken a look at pictures and but the only thing was it was nice to actually go and see the home in person and I remember meeting you there actually and doing like a walkthrough and looking through the kitchen and a lot of the homes. What I like about a lot of the homes in Arizona is the high ceilings. The high ceilings and the fans. I mean, I know that home in particular had pretty high ceilings in the living room area, and so I thought that was pretty cool. And just the space, the space, and I like that everything is community based, so that they have the walls in the backyard and everything like that, which is good for like having kids.
Yeah. So you guys you did a FaceTime, right? I think with you saying
Yeah.
your dad. And so how did like seeing the property that way differ from closing day when you came out to sign basically on closing day and like you saw your house for the first time the day you
I remember actually coming out to have to close and sign those documents in person. I had no problem with seeing it through FaceTime because you kind of took me through all the different things in all the different areas. You went through the rooms. You showed me all the different spaces we had, like the closet space and master bedroom, all the bathrooms, what was in the garage. And honestly, I felt very comfortable when I was looking at it because we already had in mind what we were looking for. So I felt that when we saw all these different things, we just basically checked it off the list.
Right. So maybe a better way to say it is knowing exactly what you want is what's going to make it.
I think it's important. Like we took into account like schools and neighborhood, and the things close by areas. And she had some family close by, and that factored in as well for us personally. And also what's cool about a lot of the communities is they have the parks, like, in the neighborhood and where they have like events and things like that. And I know that area has a golf course as well. Mm-hmm. So we thought about those things also, and outdoor areas that they would have, like the community common areas for the community, because those were things that we were thinking about in the future for when we would have kids.
Perfect. So, what would you say, like how it kind of works the same way for the second one, but the transactions were a little different. You got to see it like halfway through the contract. What would you say were either mistakes you made with the first one or changes you would have made based on the second one in Peoria?
The one thing I would say that I would have done differently is in the second house that we bought, we paid more attention to the backyard, the outdoor area. The first home, it didn't really have much of a, there was no pool or anything set up there, or it was just basically, just the land and then and the walls. The second home already had a built-in pool. It already had a grill. It already had a back patio area with fans. There were palm trees in the backyard of the second home, the Peoria property. So those things factored in, because after we bought the first home, and then we really bought the second home only like 2 years later. It was the end of 2016. I remember it was November, and when we closed on it. And
in October, because Isa was getting married.
So I was close. And the second house, we absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, it had things that we liked about the first house, but definitely more expansive. I mean, the kitchen was much more well done with the granite countertops, the stools, and it had 2 master bedrooms. I mean, it had a 3-car garage, and it had a lot more space and storage space as well. Walk-in closets. That was something else that we didn't really think about, the walk-in closets as much with the first home. Like it had nice closet space, but when we saw these closets, like, a couple of them were like almost the size of a room. Yeah. And the backyard was definitely the biggest thing for me that was different between the first house and the second house.
Okay. So the second one, so the first one you didn't see until closing day.
That's right.
The second one, you happened to be out here for a wedding, and we were able just to go see it before you actually like signed papers and stuff towards the end of the inspection period. So for you, was there a difference in being able to see it on closing day versus during the inspection period?
Yeah, because the thing about seeing it beforehand was I was able to confirm things and see like what they actually look like in person. And also, we went across the street, right across, that's a corner house. So right across the street, there's a park with a basketball court, and I was able to actually go there and see like what kind of space it has. And it was pretty expansive. And being able to actually go into the home and get a feel for the actual size of the rooms and the layout of the house, I think it was helpful in our decision because we knew we loved the home from the photos we had seen. But there's nothing like just seeing it in person. I mean, when you see the house in person, it's so much better. And then you start to think ahead, like, oh, I'm going to do this to this room. I'm going to decorate this room this way. We're going to use this room as a guest bedroom and, you know, things of that nature.
Okay. So, Yesenia, because you were kind of like can she hear me? Yesenia?
She should be here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Yesenia is on Isa's phone, by the way. So,
yeah.
So Yesenia, you were kind of like part and parcel to that whole thing, and you were there for like a lot of the like showing, like virtual showings and stuff. Can you like maybe describe how it was for you?
I think a lot of it is, I feel like the house will speak to you. It always will. Like the first time around, the house was just like, when we saw it after seeing like so many every single day, it was just like, okay, this is my house. We got to move on it now. Second time around, same thing. And so I think like, you know, you have to have a very good realtor that you trust. And obviously we trust you. And like when you go there, you're our eyes, you're our physical eyes there. So you have to, you know, make sure the person's going to be honest with you. Right. And if you have a family member that's out here, send somebody that's going to tell you the truth. Like, hey, no, this house is trash, or yeah, you know, this house is awesome, but it lacks this. Like, just to be honest, because you don't want to commit to something that's just not going to be for you in the long run. And then you have to turn around and sell it to buy something else. Like, it's just a mess. So I think a lot of it's just about trust on who's on your team. And it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. So, how did you guys decide on the second location? Because the neighborhoods are kind of similar in their design, but they're in two different neighborhoods. How did you guys decide on the North Peoria neighborhood?
Yeah,
I grew up there. I grew up in North Peoria my whole life, North Glendale, North Peoria area. So I had always wanted to move back and raise my kids there. So that's how we chose North Peoria for our second house.
Okay.
We were looking in multiple areas for the second home. I mean, we looked in like Paradise Valley, we looked in Scottsdale, we looked in Peoria. We had some ideas, like a few neighborhoods in mind, and we knew another thing was we knew we wanted a pool for the second home. We didn't really think about that so much when we were buying the first home, but we knew we definitely wanted to get a pool, and so that was a big factor as well. And she said she grew up there, so that did really help. And so, you know, she had talked about that area before. And so I was constantly on Zillow and Trulia and all those websites, like looking at homes and comparing the size of the homes and what you get for your money, looking at the backyards and seeing like what you can get. And so that was a big part of the process. We didn't just kind of like see one home and that was it. We definitely looked through, I want to say we looked like over through 100 homes probably just before we found one but when we saw the second home, we knew right away. We looked at it, we absolutely loved it. And we was like, this is the home that we want. And I remember bringing it to you and talking to you about it, and you looked into it and you agreed it was a great home. And then we went through the whole e-sign thing again, which again was super easy. And I want to emphasize that just because when I bought my properties in New York, it was way harder, much more difficult.
Why don't we talk about that, like spend a couple minutes. So when you bought something and you happen to actually be there and be able to like and be there for everything, maybe talk about how different it was in New York versus Arizona.
So at the time, I believe my wife was working for Remax at that time, and so our realtor was through Remax, and and we were looking for a co-op on this one because we wanted to be close by to my parents and my brother as well, and we found a place that was really only like 5 to 6 minutes away from them. And when we were looking at places, we found this co-op. I have a few friends who actually live in this co-op as well. So that kind of factored in, and we spoke to the realtor, and she said, this is a great deal that you can get. Oddly enough, the co-op that we bought was more expensive than the first house that we bought in Arizona. And it's only like a 2-bedroom. It's not even like a junior 4-4. And it was, and the thing about the process that was different, I mean, we didn't do anything through e-sign really. Maybe a couple things, but for the most part, everything was done in person. Everything was a lot more stressful, I would say. It was very, some things I felt were very slow to happen as well. It felt like a dragged out process. And so I felt overall the experience, not that it was a bad experience, but it was definitely a more trying experience. And I felt a lot more pressured in that situation than when I bought either of my homes in Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a different experience. Also, we had to have, I believe we had to have a lawyer too. And that was kind of a pain that we had to, and like, in the end, when I really thought about it, he didn't really do that much. We had to pay him, but he didn't really do that. It was like things that it could have been done. And I guess having bought the homes first in Arizona and not having to have the lawyer showed me how simple it actually could be. And then I almost felt like it was a little backwards. And I was surprised because it's like New York. And I was like, shouldn't they have a really effective system here? But everything was kind of dragged out. That's just my personal experience with it.
Yeah. So some states are actually what they consider lawyer states, because in those states, real estate agents aren't allowed to write their own contracts. So they'll like negotiate the deal, talking over the phone or through email, and then they send it over to the lawyers to draft it up. Where here, our association pays a bunch of lawyers to draft a contract, and that way we can just fill in the blank and add any terms that we need. And then once or twice, like once a year, sometimes every 2 years, they review it based on who went to court over what, and they tweak it. So here we have real estate attorneys, but they usually only come in when you're about to evict somebody or somebody was not honest in a transaction and breached the contract or something. So here we have attorneys. They just don't get involved unless things get ugly. So there's that.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
So, alrighty then. Well, thanks so much.
Of course.
I'm gonna do like a quick screen share just based on, because I have a lot of out-of-state clients, and I really appreciate you guys chiming in, and then maybe ease up with some of this. Is I'm gonna share my screen here real quick.
Okay.
Oh, it moved.
There it is. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so let me just do. Hello, come on. Wait, can you guys see my entire screen at this point?
I see virtual home buying tips. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we kind of went over some of that when you were talking about how you actually viewed the home. And like I said, a lot of people, because of the COVID stuff, they're like, oh, well, I got to figure out how to do this virtually, and it's some new thing. But to be honest, like, we have so many relocations from out of state in Arizona, and we always have. The better, like the majority of agents who are actually active and producing and doing several deals a year in Arizona have been doing this for well over a decade. And so most of the people so far, like up until this COVID stuff, were either relocating from out of state to work or retirement. They were
Right.
foreign residents whose ability to travel was limited. So like they couldn't just fly back and forth or drive back and forth from another state easily. It was
Mhm.
several $1,000s to come here. And then we've always had investors just buy things based on a spreadsheet without ever setting foot in the property. And we've had them from California, New York, China, you name it. And then the kind of new virtual buyer now is like the high risk people who need to move but need to limit their exposure. Or I'm finding some of my buyers who, for example, say live in New York or Oregon or California where things are much more locked down and they're not able to easily travel. So
Yeah. So are they driving over mostly because of flying and stuff right now?
before I had, before all this happened, I had some California residents who contacted me and they like to RV. So they're looking for a place here. They're getting ready to retire from
Nice.
California.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
so they were like, we love to take our RV for the weekend and we want to be in Arizona and we want an RV garage. We'll just drive over. So that was their thing. But then I've also had people from Minnesota who would fly in for a weekend, do like a mega blitz, see 15 or 20 homes, and then everything else would be done virtually. The other thing, currently, I have one client stuck in France who wants to sell his home, would normally come here for 15 days every year, but he can't because we have the travel restrictions where nobody from Europe or China or the Asian countries can come here right now. So his vacation is canceled and his condo, his Airbnb is sitting empty with nobody renting it. And so that's even as crazy as like so far, like I have to go find somebody who can clean it, who will also accept payment online because there's no other way for him to pay them. So it's getting a little bit different, but then I've got like some clients up in Oregon and Washington that they're more locked down. They can't come here for the weekend. I've had some clients who came out here, couldn't find anything, but they can't afford to fly back and forth. So I've had them send, like I've had couples send one of the decision makers out and because one ticket is cheaper and then they literally just FaceTime with their spouse like you and Yesenia have done. It's been a little crazy, but I'm seeing more of it just under the conditions that we're at right now. So we went over like FaceTime. Another one I use a lot with my husband is Google Hangouts when I'm traveling so I can talk to my boys. Google Meet is a new thing. It kind of works the same way. It's a video conference, or it's their version of Zoom, I guess you would say.
Sure. Yep.
You can also do Facebook video calls because I find the iPhone users and the Droid users can't always communicate because FaceTime is more of an Apple thing and Google Hangouts or Google Meet is an Android thing. So if everybody's technology can't communicate, then there's also Facebook video calls now, Zoom like we're doing here, or GoToMeeting, but I prefer Zoom just because I use it for everything else already. So
yeah, you're comfortable with it. It works well.
Yeah. Well,
I use it a lot too.
Yeah. So, so then I find, and these are like the 3 websites that I end up giving like every single out-of-state client is communitycrimemap.com, which allows you to map all of the crime anywhere in the U.S. Of any sort. And then there's School Digger, which is a performance-based school ranking system, which I like as a former teacher. And you can probably appreciate. I don't like people's opinions of Mrs. Johnson in the first grade over what's really happening and if the kids are actually learning in the first grade. So Great Schools is okay, but it compiles a lot of reviews, and the schools that have more reviews tend to get ranked higher, even if they don't perform all that well. So I don't like it as much, but it is tied into Zillow and Trulia and a lot of other websites. And I mean, like, it's okay for getting an idea, but I've run into several situations where it'll rank a school as a 7, 8, 9, or 10 when really it performs kind of middle of the pack or sometimes even really low. So
Right.
I prefer School Digger because it's simply performance based. And then the other thing I find is a lot of people, everybody uses Google Maps when they're trying to figure out how to get somewhere. But I find a lot of our out-of-state buyers will say, well, I don't want to go 3 miles to the grocery store or work or whatever, where like in your neighborhood, 3 miles like is far and it could take a long time, you know?
Yeah.
But here, 3 miles is like 3 minutes, you know, it's, so I find, there's a handy little tip on Google Maps where you can sort, basically look at the commute times based on a certain time of day. And then that way you can use that to try to figure out, okay, if I know I don't want to commute more than 30 minutes, you can take the address that you're interested in, map it to your, say you're coming here to relocate for work, to your new work address, and then look at the commute times on Monday morning. So, and then the other thing is map your hobbies. Like, so Tim, you like to golf, right?
I've done it a few times. I'm decent.
And so, or you were excited about being a golfer because Arizona's a golf state.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And then there's other people that come here for the hiking, or they want
to basketball courts too.
Right.
They have those as well, and the playgrounds for kids. I mean, that's really awesome too.
Right. So you can map and kind of figure out like, okay, where's my hobbies or whatever. So I'm just going to keep sharing. I'm going to click this here. So when you first go to Community Crime Map, you zoom in like a lot. And this is just their default kind of crime map. And it doesn't even show everything. And so what I find is a good thing to do is you come over here, and then I like to go back 6 months. All right. And then you can, it says event, but by default, homicides and robberies and aggravated assault are checked, but like attempted homicide isn't. So I go through and I check all of those. Me and my brother have a difference of opinion on how many of these and which of these to actually check. But I like to see all of them.
Right.
Because
crime rate's pretty important. Yeah.
So like, for example, my brother doesn't like checking the domestic violence because he feels like that could happen in any neighborhood and doesn't necessarily affect you. I like it because I know that those kids in that neighborhood are going to go to school with my kids, and what they see at home might rub off on them.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. As a teacher, I can attest to that. That's a good point.
So, for example, over here in Sun City, so down at the very bottom of the events here, where it says all other - non-criminal, that's Sun City. That's like barking dogs. Somebody left their trash can out too long. It's a retirement community. It's age restricted. And so I find it funny that there's like this whole rash in all the adult communities over here of non-criminal complaints. So, I mean, when you look at that, you're like, okay, it's got pretty low crime, but Nosy Nancy next door might be up in my business a lot. So, not bad.
No, that's reasonable.
Yeah. And then there's also, if you go down here where it says offenders, it doesn't automatically map known sex offenders, which is crazy. You would think that would be one of the things that they do.
Yeah.
But they don't. So, and then when that populates, you're like, oh, hello. And you can kind of start to see like a pattern. And then it really helps, like if you scroll in to like different neighborhoods, and you can see, and this is another thing I like too, is even for local families, you never know when you're looking at the perfect house and right next door there might be some pedophile who's going to probably try to take advantage of your kids because they have a high recidivism rate. So, so I really like that because you can zoom right in. You can click on them, and it'll give you their name, where they live, what they were convicted of. And so some of them you'll when you click on them, some of them you'll find that it was something they did when they were stupid and drunk at the age of 25, and they got caught peeing in an alley, and they'll call it indecent exposure.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who's like an actual pedophile or committed a violent crime is a different story. And then another thing I have found is they have this density like heat map that they do.
Okay.
And so you can actually see, it's only wanting to load half. It's probably because my computer's taking all of its, but anyway, you can see like where the hot spots really are, you know, just at a glance. And then, you know, obviously the further out you get from here, the cooler it gets, and then eventually drops off so much that it doesn't even really register, you know. So yeah, I mean, and then you can even go down and sort by which agency. So if you know you're stuck on Scottsdale, that's where you want to be, you can actually go and layer the beats, the districts, and the subzones. But I find that to be less useful. But anyway, so yeah, so there's that. That's one of the things I think I give to even local families when they're looking, just because you don't want to move in. And here's the thing, when somebody moves into your neighborhood where you already live, you're going to have to get a notification on your door that says, hey, registered sex offender just moved into your neighborhood. This is where they live. This is what they did. This is their name, their picture. When you move into a neighborhood and they already live there, nobody's going to tell you. So you're not going to get something in the mail after you move in. So it's one of those things where I like it if people can do this in advance. So let's hop over here and go to School Digger.
And the homes, when I was searching, the homes in Arizona, at least all the ones that I saw, seem to be, like, in terms of when they were built, they're pretty new. Because I noticed that there's a lot of new constructions, first of all, and then I also noticed that there was the homes were built like after 2000, like 2001, 2010. Like I was looking at that, and I thought that was an interesting thing, because in New York, a lot of the homes were built like after World War II. You have a lot of homes in the 1950s, if you look at the dates of when the homes were built, and like there's a lot of wear and tear on the homes here. But in Arizona, you know, there's not so much, because they're newer homes in general.
Most of them are probably, we've only had a really big influx the last 20 to 30 years. It was like 1985, 1990 is when people were walking here. Basically when ACs were invented. Before that, we all had swamp coolers, and it was miserable.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
Basically, that's about how it went down. But we also do, though, like in historic, like downtown Phoenix and the older communities, we do have some homes that are 100, 120 years old.
Oh, wow.
But most of them have been torn down. There are some that are preserved. It just, there's a few historical neighborhoods, but not nearly as many. And they mostly tend to center downtown, or like downtown Gilbert, or, you know, in tiny towns, but you don't see nearly as many of them.
Right.
So when you get to School Digger, you can go to anywhere in the US. I like, instead of finding a school, I like to go to school rankings, because that's what I care about the most. But then when I get there, most people would tend to think that they want to sort things based on the age of their kids and what grade they're going into, or maybe even by district. But I find there are some districts that are high performing because their elementary schools are great, but then somewhere between middle school and high school, something happens, and then their high school's not all that great. So I like to sort by high school, because the high school is basically an average, a conglomeration of all the other schools that feed into it. And
Right.
so, or the type of parent that enrolls their kid there. So what I like to do is I come in and I sort by rank, and then you can actually compare schools. Now, unfortunately, in Arizona, we have like 4 or 6 out of the top 10 highest ranked schools in the nation, and they are all basis schools. So if you want your kid to go to basis, which is a really, really tough, challenging school, great. But if you're looking at going somewhere else, you might want to go elsewhere. So another thing you can do is you can rank by city. So Isa, do you want to unmute yourself? Let's use like maybe one of your defaults. She's yelling at her.
Yeah.
Well, I know she's looking in Peoria, so I'm going to try to be quick about this because I've only got about 15 minutes left. So in Peoria, you get, out of, several thousand schools in Arizona, when you look at Peoria and you're looking at all the high schools, you've got some of the top performing schools between Great Hearts, Basis, and you can see their ranks. So then you can take and save them, right? Like the Liberty High School 7 to 12, and Peoria. Let's do that. And then you can actually go, where'd it go? There should be a little button where I can, my schools. And then you can see just those. I'll map them out for you. I'll put them on a happy little heat map. And then it'll actually give you their rankings, how many students they have, and the whole 9 yards. So I find it really helpful. Even if you don't have kids in school, I find that the schools are a pretty good indicator of the type of people that live in that neighborhood. So,
yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
even though you might be retired, it might be a better investment indicator for, what type of neighborhood you're going to be living in.
Right.
Or you could, if you're of a certain age and you're a certain amount of mature, you can actually go to Sun City and have no kids. You won't have to worry about the school.
Just go straight to Sun City and retire.
Right. And then the other thing here is I find, so here's my office up here. It's not the dirt, I promise. It's on the other side of the street. The Google cam is like looking across Scottsdale Road away from our office. It was kind of dumb, but so one of the things I find is people want to tend to, let's see here. Let's say, give me somewhere to, let's say you're thinking of living in North Scottsdale and
yeah.
I'm trying to think of something to, let's say you're going to work for Intel.
Okay.
In the East Valley. So the nice thing about this is you can see it's actually 55-minute drive, but that's like right now. So if you go and you want to arrive by, let's go up here to like 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
on, let's say, a Monday. So that, that can stretch your commute time. But if you look at the actual distance, that's 50 miles, where versus say you were going to go to Leor the baker, who was on Blippi. So that's why it's mapped, because of my kids.
They have a lot of also a lot of the another thing I noticed was, I mean, it's pretty easy to get wherever you want in Arizona because the highway system, you can just hop on the 10 or I think the 17, right? Is that in the 101 is the other one?
Yeah. So here, like other places, they'd say, oh, it's 4 or 5 miles, where here we tend to measure more in minutes. So
right.
You're the baker over here in like Scottsdale, almost Fountain Hills. He's, 25 minutes from my far, far north Scottsdale office. So
Okay.
it's kind of, different. But then again, I mean, this straight line here is 10 minutes because that's 5 miles, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something like, like 5 miles just to that, but it only takes me 10 minutes. But anyway, so, and that's the same thing as you want to like kind of drag and drop, look for the golf courses, which are all happy and green, and, TPC Scottsdale, if that's a big deal for you, we're going to add the stop. And
if you don't want the actual golf course, you could just live near a Top Golf and go there. And
we have like 2 now. I think there's one on the west side now, I think.
Right.
So, and then Arizona is a big golf state. So like all these little green patches you see, almost all of them are golf courses. We have like 300 days of golf weather a year out of 365. But anyway, is there anything from like your point of view as a buyer, Tim, that I might have like skipped over?
There's one big thing that for you is probably just an everyday thing. So I think living there, you don't think about it as much, but being from New York, one of the big things that when I was buying my home that I also thought about was the weather. It's beautiful in Arizona. I mean, other than maybe a little bit hot in the summer, it's in most of the year in Arizona is just beautiful weather, and that was one of the reasons why I was excited to still am excited to get out of New York, because we deal with winters and snow and all these things. I mean, and if you love snow and you love the cold, you could really just drive 3 hours north of Phoenix and go to Flagstaff, and you can do your skiing there. That's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. And I didn't even know, but, being from New York and not having gone to Arizona previously until like I started looking at the homes, I didn't realize that Arizona had so many different landscapes. And like I thought the whole state was a desert, to be honest. And I think a lot of people have that assumption before they actually travel there. But, if you buy a home in Phoenix, you're only like 2 hours from Sedona and and about 3.5 hours from the Grand Canyon. And you have old mining towns like Jerome, and I feel there's just so much you could see. I mean, if you go 5 hours north, you're in Vegas. 5 hours left is like LA. So you're in like a hub almost in terms of like a central location. It's easy to get to other really popular destinations. So that was another thing that factored in for me, actually. I was like, this is cool. I mean, I love to go to Vegas. I love LA, and I can do it in one day in a matter of 5 hours, and I'm there.
Yeah.
Or scenery, the outdoors. Like if you're an outdoor person, that's another really big thing about Arizona. And I experienced outdoors more through Arizona than anything I've experienced here. So that's another cool thing, and getting to go to like see the Red Rocks in Sedona and see the Grand Canyon. And I feel that the weather allows you to see these things for most of the year. And even in the winter, we just recently went to the Grand Canyon in December, and it was awesome. It was a totally different experience than going in the summer.
Yeah. In fact, they closed the North Rim in the winter because it's too snow-packed basically to drive up there. It's a little too scary. But you can go to the South Rim pretty much year-round. So
right, and
people go anyway. But
the weather was a big selling point for us. Just the fact that 60-degree weather and 60 to 80 is like, and I love the heat. Even when it's hot, it's dry, so it's not like you're actually sweating. You know what I mean? It's just so and also the sunsets there are absolutely stunning.
I'm gonna do an ad. It says you should move to Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the one of the photos for my second house that I bought, the Peoria house, had a sunset, and I thought that it was photoshopped because it was like 5 different colors. It was like pink, orange, and purple, and I was like, this is awesome. And then when I actually went there and saw those sunsets, I was like, wow, okay, this is actually legit. So so that was another thing. It's just like it's a very scenic state. So you really can't go wrong if you buy a home in Phoenix. I really feel that it's a beautiful area. You know, the people are very friendly. You have palm trees everywhere. That kind of like puts you in a good mood. You know, it's a good feel to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tim. I know that my clients, most of them couldn't see this because of the time difference, and they got stuff going on, and they're in lockdown states where they have like Zoom meetings 24/7.
Right. Right.
But I know that they'll appreciate this and kind of trying to figure out the ins and the outs and how things work and where to look and how to look and that
Sure.
kind of thing. But I really appreciate it, Tim. Have a good one and happy anniversary. And I hope Yesenia gets to go home soon.
Likewise. Thank you so
All right.
much. And thank you for being such a great realtor and helping me through the process both times. I
Well,
appreciate it.
You guys made it easy. So
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Have a good one. All right.
You too. Take care.
Bye.